Thank
Right.
you. You can hear me
Okay,
clearly.
Nick, I think you are in the very interesting session. The green jobs, climate literacy leads to green jobs. I heard you speaking because I was just migrating from one group to the other. But I could, when you were speaking, I could just see someone. So please present your group's findings.
I think the overall finding was that we're missing a big opportunity in terms of both climate action, but also building a green economy with decent jobs by not actually embracing in every economy around the world and in every country the role of climate education and environmental literacy in the national curricula. You know, since 1992, governments agreed in the UN climate treaty that they would include climate education as being indispensable as part of the suite of actions that we need to take to deal with climate change. And that was reaffirmed in the Paris Agreement of 2015. But to date, only one country has actually brought it into their national curricula. That's Italy. Everybody else has been kind of flip-flopping around, trying to work out whether it's important or not. And the evidence is that while some governments say this is not the right time because teachers are struggling with COVID-19, there are 33 million teachers out there in 178 countries that are demanding that governments at the COP bite the bullet, grasp the nettle, and agree that as part of the Paris Agreement, they will implement the climate education bit of the Paris Agreement by making it a compulsory subject woven across the national curricula. I think this was one part of it. There is evidence from the International Labour Organization, from our session, that many jobs can be created in what they call the green economy, decent jobs, particularly in renewable energy, mainly because renewable energy requires more people to actually do renewable energy than, say, coal-fired power stations or oil-fired production systems that are causing the climate change. So indeed, there's more jobs in it. And if you look across the green economy, many areas where we have squeezed labor so hard in our economies and incomes because we thought that was the way to become efficient economies. But with 7 billion people going to 10 billion by 2050, we need to find jobs, and we need to find good jobs. And actually building a green economy where waste is no longer waste, but you have a circular economy where everything's used, that means more people have to be employed. That's good. And also renewable energy employs more people. Managing our forests and our natural systems like wetlands and our soils, you know, billions of hectares of land around the world are degraded from intensive agriculture. We need to restore that. So there are jobs in that. So when you look across it, the green economy, which is about creating a sustainable economic transition, has inherently in it the seeds of very good job employment, very good, decent green jobs employment, and that really needs an educated citizenry that begins in school to understand both the risks we're running, but also the opportunities of a transition to a green economy in terms of their futures in the workforce. So I would just leave it there. Thank you.
Thank you, Nick. I think well said. This is interesting observation. In fact, UNESCO brought out a report in May while launching the ESD 2030. And they did a survey of curriculum around the world. Forget about the specific course on climate change, but even in the curriculum, the word climate change was only 50% in the curriculum. Means and biodiversity is just 19%.
Yeah. That's a very good point. And I'd just like to add one thing to our session, which was that, you know, we didn't really touch on this in great detail, but vaguely, there is a bit of a delusion among governments that they actually are providing sustainable education, sustainable development education. There's a bit of a delusion they're providing climate education. There's a bit of a delusion and illusion that they're providing environmental literacy. I think the litmus test is, if you ask any young person leaving school in any country right now, do they feel that they are equipped for the seismic changes that are going to happen on this planet unless we deal with climate change? Do they feel equipped to actually think through the creative processes of how they could contribute in the economy and in society to dealing with these and changing the ship around? Most young people, even in richer economies like the UK, but in poor economies too, feel singularly unprepared by the formal education system for the task at hand. And that would seem that when computing came in, governments really jumped on that, right? They started educating all young people about computing. This was the new economy. The new economy has to be a green economy if we're going to save this planet and its people. And the children need to be educated and equipped for these transitions, which will affect their lives, not my life, and to be able to contribute to solving these problems in creative and productive and green economic ways.
Oh, very well said. In fact, yes, awareness maybe, but is that awareness leading to some action, real action? And that too, transformation will happen only when naturally that awareness or knowledge or information, whatever our education system provides, is translates or transform the learner to take tangible action linked to their profession, jobs, or wherever they are. Means the one you can say access is that create green jobs. The other one is greening of the existing jobs. Means that is where the real transformation required. What we can call is a transfitting or transformation into the existing jobs towards green economy. Exactly. So that is where means this education has to lead.
Right, that also comes to skills training. You're absolutely right. I mean, even in Germany, where they're trying to, they provide grants for people to install heat pumps in homes, which would reduce emissions from the household. They don't have enough people skilled in installing heat pumps. Now that's in Germany, right? So there is a massive skills story here for the existing workforce, so that that all the technologies available to make a healthier world can actually be deployed in just very ordinary things like things you fit in homes. Yeah, people are very conservative. What they've learned, they tend to carry on doing. They need to be reskilled as well to realize there are new ways of doing things.
That's true. Skilling and reskilling.
Yeah.
It's a lifelong learning. Thank you so much. I think this was very interesting.
Thank you, Ram.
And very interesting presentation. I think we will look forward to the tangible outcome of this group. Means maybe in the concluding plenary, some of these points will be taken care. Thank you so much. I think Neha, you were in which group?
Session 2, IT-based solution, Dr. Ambaj. Hi, hello everyone. Good evening.
So can you make the presentation of your group, session 2?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, so this session particularly delved into various challenges and opportunities with respect to IT-based solution for education. Of course, the global pandemic has, seemingly accelerated the need for online learning and IT-based solutions for education. But at the same time, we cannot deny the fact that, we have been for long trying to embed technology into education. It's been over a decade since we have been sort of trying to do that. There has certainly been a significant shift to online learning and education technology in the last decade. So, because, at this point of time, distance learning and online medium is the only option because of the school closures. One very important aspect that we kind of discussed was that children certainly learn better through technology. They learn faster through technology because of the fact that they already have an affinity to this medium. But the teachers they lack the requisite skills to be able to plan and impart, those things. So that certainly came out as a big one. Over in today's session, what we kind of looked at is the huge digital divide amongst various sectors in the country, various, if we are to compare the urban and the rural, even tier 2 cities, it's basically the divide is such that it's not allowing people to access modern information. There is a lack of digital infrastructure, even though we know that the efforts are accelerated towards developing this infrastructure because the government has a strong inclination towards it. What really came out as a big one was the teacher capacity, which was not in just in terms of IT skills, but also their understanding of the issues pertaining to environment and sustainability, because there is so much of misinformation around, how is a teacher equipped to address environmental issues and sustainability in her classroom? Does she know the right pedagogies? Apart from that, what came out as a big challenge was how to create a learning experience through an online medium where we can provide immersive learning experience to a child. Generally, the attention span on digital medium is so low that we cannot hold our audience for too long. So, and last year we were all grappling with multiple things where we were we did not know what exactly to do. We were kind of, a lot of hit and trial was happening, but I think so for today a lot of learning has also happened, and we are, I think so, doing much better on that front. One thing that I kind of brought up during this conversation was the cyber security issue, particularly because there are children involved. When children come on a digital platform, what are the various security measures which are taken so that the child privacy is not violated? So there are a whole lot of those things which were kind of brought up during the discussion. One thing which sort of was discussed was that children there is a lack of literacy skills amongst the students, but at the same time IT based solutions can give us more advanced tools where children can learn through various mediums. It doesn't have to be simple literacy and numeracy. Mediums like audio visuals and audio can be used to kind of impart learning. So that came up as a big opportunity, within those challenges. I think so. Everybody was sort of discussing that even though we see many challenges when it comes to IT-based solutions for education, at the same time, it has also opened up tons of opportunities for us, because since last year, since the pandemic hit us, we were not left with any choice, which is why various technologies have also evolved and come a long way in providing solutions addressing these gaps. So another thing that we kind of discussed during the session was that there already are multiple technology-based programs run by multiple organizations. There are tons of digital resources already available on NIOS, on various government platforms. Various non-government organizations also have so many resources, but the challenge arises when the teacher is not equipped to kind of curate those skills and curate those resources and pick up the right ones that fit her classroom requirement. That's where teacher education kind of comes in a big way. So certainly the big task at hand is to kind of collaboration amongst all the agencies who are kind of developing new digital resources every day to kind of come together. Instead of creating new resources, we can actually curate the existing ones and make sure that they are kind of taken across learners, in all across the country. So these were some of the big takeaways from this session. This session was organized by WWF India, Sashakt Bharat, NIOS, and Foundation for Environmental Education. So, yeah. If anyone has any questions, I'm happy to take those questions.
Yes, Neha, I think you made a very forceful point and very strong group that you made certain, like children learn better and faster through technology. This is interesting. In fact, this recent report that has come out, locked out emergency report on education. And these are a group of economists and educators. They say that this digital, of course, you mentioned about digital divide, but the question of this, even the interest, only 19% of children in urban and 37%, 19% in rural and 37% urban, they could take part in some of those on a regular basis. And the online access is hardly 8% in rural and 24% in urban areas. So that is regarding the access. But even the interest-wise, like people are the students, and for teachers, it has always been a problem. You rightly mentioned about teacher education, but they consider this as a nightmare. For students, although they are fed up with, because they are at the gaze of their parents, parental pressure, and all those kind of things. And content is so dry. I mean, as you rightly said, there are a lot of content, but really there is not only education crisis, but crisis of the right kind of content.
Absolutely.
So I think all these issues are there. And of course, collaboration. I think ICSC is one platform. I think in some way, some takeaway from this session, we can form a network or some kind of platform where we can really collaborate in all those aspects. That would be one of the greatest achievements. So
just one thing, that this group was very positive, and even though we discussed the challenges a lot, but this was a very positive and hopeful lot with no apprehensions, and everybody kind of believed that maybe there are tons of challenges at this point of time, but in perhaps in a couple of years, we will be certainly better positioned in terms of digital infrastructure. So yeah, so we will be able to achieve something, if not what we had set out to.
And another thing, 90% of the teachers in the Delhi survey in urban and 97% rural areas, they want schools to open.
Yeah.
So means almost 100% people, they want schools to open, both parents and students. So again, the question is like experts are rooting for blended learning.
Right.
But we have to rethink about all those those issues.
Certainly.
So, any other question from Neha? Because I don't know where other groups are. So we have still plenty of time waiting for other groups to come. I think there are very animated discussion in other groups going on. So you people were quick enough to come to the conclusion.
Yeah, I think so. We decided not to do last bit in the interest of time, and we wanted to kind of take question and answers. So that was, the priority for us, because we knew 4:30 we are supposed to report over here.
And that is the crux of online learning. It has to be very, very time management is the I think key to a successful online program.
It's important to keep the time also for the whole conference.
Yes.
I think time management is also critical about how we address the climate crisis. We have been extending and delaying things in all parameters. I think that's something which is throughout for everyone to achieve.
That's true.
There must be some way of getting across to whoever is the leaders in each of the sessions that they must stick to the time, and because other things get delayed if you're over and you're encroaching on someone else's time. That's the point that has to be got across.
Archana, any news?
Yes, sir. We are coordinating with the moderators to allow them to come to plenary session. We are waiting from 3 sessions.
So what happened to those sessions? They are already it's too late.
So they are in deep discussion right now.
They might be, but others are they're encroaching on someone else's time.
No, this is the last session, so means we do not have. Then we have networking and all those.
We have a concluding plenary, and then we have networking. So on both sides, the concluding plenary is supposed to be over by now. It's 1700.
Yeah. Yes.
Trying again.
Yeah, you just remind again, and let us discuss with Neha. Very interesting discussion we had on online. Neha, are you there? You are mute.
Yes, I'm here. Yes, I'm here.
What was the NIOS take on this whole scenario in the country, which is happening? In fact, are they still like struggling to, because all those private players, they have come up so strongly, so vigorously. So
I think Anshul is here, and I think so she's left. Yeah, Anshul, sorry, she was just here, and I think so she's left. Yeah, so NIOS, they have recently launched their virtual resource library, and certainly I could sense that they were struggling. So, and they are probably not the only ones. Everybody kind of shared the same views when it came to reaching the audience, the target beneficiaries for the kind of portal that they are developing. So I think so. They have been running these programs for past like 30 years. So they are pretty hopeful that something is definitely going to turn around with the new portal that they have come up with.
Great hope.
Yeah.
Yes. No, definitely. This is Ajay. I think we didn't hear you much because Nick made a very nice this summary of your session. Besides what he said, do you feel like green jobs? Are they really? Because in the sense that we are losing jobs at a very fast pace because of COVID and the economic turndown, a lot of people are losing jobs. So in that scenario, is the green job is going to become a fad, or just say, for example, Sri Lanka wanted to become the whole country as a green, this organic in a haste, and now they are facing food crisis. They have declared food emergency because they didn't think of, means forcibly they wanted to create this, the whole greening of the agriculture sector. So any uh, thought on this? I think he must have just gone somewhere to other groups. Archana,
Yes, sir.
please coordinate with
I
others.
am coordinating, sir, on it.
Tell them just time is up. They should.
Sir, we have Sanskriti Menon ma'am.
Sanskriti, great. No, she's not.
She was here. She was here.
Sanskriti, are you there?
Hello, I am here. Yeah.
So, yes, good, great.
Good evening. Good evening.
So you exceeded your session's time by how many minutes? By 30 minutes?
No, not at all. Actually, I went into the plenary session, but I think I was not, I hadn't joined as panelist. So I was listening to your conversation till I realized that I needed to use the other link. Sorry for that.
Okay, so
we didn't exceed our time. It was just that I joined in the wrong way.
Archana, just remind everyone they might be facing the same problem.
Sir, we have reshared the links with everyone by their moderators. Yes.
Okay. So Sanskriti, nice to see you after a long time, that too virtually. So go ahead with your presentation, with your findings of your group. That was interesting. I was there for some time.
Yes. So thank you for listening in for briefly also. So we had quite a nice discussion, and I think it was quite a rich sort of experience that was shared. On the one hand, we had Johan Durand joining us from FEE, and he is the acting director for the Blue Flag program, and that was, of course, the most appropriate experience to share in that session. And then we also had Sujit Tongre from CE, and he's the national operator for Blue Flag in India, but he also brings the rich experience of tourism, sustainable tourism and biodiversity education from Goa, his own sort of experience with the coastal regulatory zone, working with youth and communities in along the Goa coast. And we had Kerry McLean from WESA, the Wildlife and Environment Society of South Africa. And that was also a very interesting initiative of, youth who drawing inspiration from the Blue Flag, but also knowing that the International Blue Flag Award has a fairly stringent framework, and it is an aspirational framework that you actually improve sustainability, the ingredients of sustainability in the practices. And you look at how all the different different stakeholders actually bring, come up to speed in terms of environmental management criteria and practices that are put in place. But the journey towards Blue Flag, they felt that they could actually have young people, trained and oriented and capacity builders, environmental stewards. And so they thought that, the work that they're doing really is looking at investing in the youth to instill this conservation and sustainability aspects linked to livelihood and environmental education, and then do their skilling and capacity building to that. So what we could sort of draw out as key takeaways was that, firstly, the sort of multi-dimensional criteria of a program like the Blue Flag Award, that serves as a good framework in which to drive both sustainability, and it provides the framework in which to do the sustainability education for facilities managers, the beach managers, the community. So the framework acts as a good, it is a framework, it's a good bucket through which to reach out and engage. And it's really a multi-stakeholder approach, which has got a sort of a, very friendly governance system. And so the beach managers, the local community, of course, the local authorities, the forest department, the coastal department, the tourism department, they can all join in, and that serves as a basic platform in which the capacity building can happen, both for the facilities management as well as then put in an environmental education and a conservation action approach. And I think the way Blue Flag has played out in India is also very good, I think, a case of how the demonstration effect of we have 8 beaches in India that have been awarded the Blue Flag last year. And that has really become aspirational. So you can see how this is a good program, and different beaches extending within the same state, look, other states wanting to join in. We have also had interest from Lakshadweep to join in. So the demonstration effect of something that is clearly it's a great program, and you can see the difference between a beach that is a Blue Flag awarded beach. I think that serves as a good spur for education for sustainable development. So I think these were some of the key takeaways from the Sustainable Coastal Tourism session that I thought would be good to bring into this plenary.
Thank you, Sanskriti. I think this is a very interesting program, Blue Flag, and linking it to sustainability education and the sustainable tourism. Interesting. Particularly the 8 beaches that have got the Blue Flag in India. And you said, I think they can serve as the
beacons.
Vehicles, as well as, I think, learning laboratories, I would say, for ESD. And of course, the demonstration is the greatest learning, the greatest education. Yeah. Any questions from anyone?
I wanted to just add also, that in both in Blue Flag and in the Green Coast program also, the ability to kind of have the livelihoods dimension and environmental management with conservation, because there is great care taken to even restoration efforts. So there is, like, for example, in Div, the local government of the administration, they in fact removed quite a lot of debris and glass from the beach, and actually engaged the community around the hotels and volunteers to clean up the beach, and actually say that we can transform this place, and it did get transformed. It became an awarded beach, and from a place which was filled with 20 trucks of broken glass to something that has won an international award. I think that's a great journey of transformation, and it's really an inspirational place, because they have also then gone into sand dune restoration, removing the exotic plants that were growing, alien invasives that were growing, that it's like a subabul kind of a infested area that has been removed, and Ipomia and the creepers that are there on the sand dunes, those have been restored. So I think it served really a good purpose by bringing together, the local governance, the conservation, the environmental education, and conservation action, and the cleanups too, livelihoods as well.
Thank you, Sanskriti. I think very good inference from your group. Interesting.
Dr. Bhuj, was that session 3 for youth, is it?
Yeah, she was talking about the session 5, sustainable tourism.
Sustainable tourism.
Yes, it was Sanskriti Menon from CEE. We have school education session 1. So who is going to make presentation?
Good evening, everyone. I will be making the presentation. I will just share my screen. So recommendations which have emerged from our session is basically we had participation from various backgrounds. Dr. Chong Shimre from NCERT shared efforts related to the NCERT's experience of looking at new education policy and how ESD could be integrated. And then we had 3 panelists where we got teacher, a principal and a managing trustee to share how they are looking at integrating ESD in schools. And then we could not have open discussion because we were running out of time, and there were a lot of interesting insights from each of our panelists and speakers. So what we have tried to look into this session is like from the framework of NEP 2020, that where target 4.7 looks into the citizenship education, and as part of ESD 2030, there are 5 policy practice areas which needs to be integrated when we are looking at sustainability education in schools. And then very importantly, which is the theme of the day, is like how do we bring education, how do we connect education for ecosystem restoration. So these were 3 areas where we have tried to look into the entire session and discuss around it. So we have actually listed down few questions which we wanted to discuss during this session. So these are the questions where we are looking at certain experiences we have from different partners who are already implementing sustainability education. So what are the different strategies, opportunities and challenges they have faced? Then how do we look into NEP 2020 policy rollout when to strengthen the sustainability education? And then for the ESD 2030 and ecosystem restoration, what are the different strategies to integrate in training our teachers as well as creating a school sustainability plan? And the last one is the like key, what we are discussing today is like for the young generation and the learners, how do we bring them opportunity where they can be become like a young ambassador, young environment ambassadors. So I'm just sharing few points which emerged from the discussion. So there are definitely challenges being faced by schools, teachers specifically, that there is a lot of curriculum load and time constraint in dealing when we are talking about bringing environmental education. Even Dr. Chong also said that we have infused environmental education, but it's usually seen as a subject which is linked to science or at most to geography. So it's very difficult to see that other dimensions, which is like culture and social. So how do we bring that? So that becomes a challenge. And also like assessment is also something which is very much connected with the school system. So other experiences which were very positive, which we heard from various speakers, like we need to integrate the current curriculum by engaging all the stakeholders. Then there is a lot of scope to work around action projects and participatory learning processes. If we promote that, we will be able to do a very effective sustainability education. Then linkage to assessment was very much addressed by all these speakers, that if we have to enrich our subjects to bring in ESD concepts as well as connect it to the assessment. So there were a lot of examples which were shared with the current practicing schools and teachers. Then curricular and extracurricular approaches needs to be adopted together. So that was something which was came up from the experience sharing. And then a school community connect, which there were a lot of stories which we found were very interesting, where community outreach has led to a lot of learning in school children, and gave us a very good examples of how do we bring this as a very core component of school education. And going from here, then next question was, we were looking at how do we look at the NEP 2020 policy rollout. So some of the things which were suggested, that though it is an infusion approach, why with NEP 2020 we can look at treating it with an interdisciplinary approach, which is very much key to ESD, and then bringing all the dimensions, socio-economical and cultural, especially in context to India. It is very important that we connect our education system with our tradition and culture if we are looking at sustainability. Then India has, like NCERT has come up with learning outcomes, which needs to be actually integrated with sustainability competencies to give a due focus to sustainability education in the school system. Then NEP also talks about promoting life skills, especially vocational education. So that can be very much part of sustainability education, using organic farming and gardening and say doing it yourself kind of experiences can be brought in. Then there is also need to allocate time and space when we are looking at NEP, that there are concepts like ecosystem, climate change, DRR, which are very important for our young generation to learn about. So that needs to be connected through this policy rollout. And teachers play a very critical role in transacting all these concepts. So their preparedness is also one of the key should be one of the key in this policy rollout. Then what are the different strategies we could look into bringing sustainability education in schools? So we found that there are a lot of schools who are working really well and applying sustainability campus approach in their school campuses. So they could be defined as a lead school and who could guide other schools and help them to become sustainable campus schools. Then there could be documentation of success stories to showcase how ESD could be integrated in not only in the curriculum, in the entire school system. Then connecting schools with innovative EE and ESD programs. A lot of people shared that they are connected to, say, a program from TERI program from other institutions, like UNESCO is doing a lot of things and UNEP is doing. And so those are the opportunities which bring a lot of dimensions in the school. So participation in such programs really help a school to become a sustainable school. Then all stakeholders of school campus needs to be engaged for planning the implementation. And then we also felt that engaging parent is very critical, because whenever you try and introduce any activity, parents have to be involved and they need to be convinced for this. Strategies to prepare teacher, it's very important we revamp the entire teacher preparation with NEP 2020, and thus orientation sessions on specific aspects related to sustainability education needs to be thought about and integrated. Then there could be a lot of training courses for teachers to prepare them specifically on ecosystem restoration and climate change related issues. And then a lot of resources are required for teachers to support them with required tools and techniques, and to introduce a lot of ideas related to action projects and activities. But now last point which we have discussed, and which is the main center of entire process, is like in school what we want citizens who are like they have they can think about the issues and they can take some solution, they can find solution and they can take action. So these are some certain things which have emerged from the discussion, that we must follow learning by doing approach in sustainability education, which needs to be like including experiential learning from nature, empower them with knowledge and skills, and give them problem solving skills. Along with that, they should be able to also make decision. Their participation in decision making is very important. During COVID, a lot of student led initiatives were promoted where parents were also involved, which gave a lot of positive results. Like schools felt that it was very good opportunity to connect with parents in a very different way, where students were taking environmental action at their own home. Then participation in online, global and national initiatives was something which really helped schools to look into the various dimensions, learn from others. And then engaging students from very young age is very important to get them doing some positive action. So these are certain experiences which emerged, and also form a very good recommendation for taking these ideas ahead and implementing them. So thank you very much for your time and patience.
Thank you very much, Preeti. I think this was most comprehensive, and I think we all must commend the group in such a short time, such a comprehensive statement that you have come out with. And I would only request that, because tomorrow's this whole the concluding statement that we are going, Karthik Bhai will be presenting that. So you just come out with some very, very concrete ideas. I liked the the sustainability plan for the schools, and the community engagement, learning outcome integration, lead skills. All these are very good and showcase. There's the showcasing of the experiences by the schools. I think this group have done a great job. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
I think straightway, because we don't have much time, let us hear the group 3, I think, role of youth. And then finally, we will hear something from Dr. Anshul Kharbanda from NIOS.
Okay, so good evening, one and all. So I'll be speaking on the recommendations as well as the takeaways from the session 3, that was role of youth. Before that, I'd like to start with a statement or quote, we can say, from a young panelist which we had today from Bhutan itself. So he said that young people are taking part not only to save our future, but also to save the present. Youth, we all know that youth will play a very important role in the ecosystem restoration. As we all are aware, by 2050, the youth will, like today's youth, will be the key figures in the coming future. So this session of the role of youth was organized by 6 organizations, that is CEE, TERI Policy Center, the Climate Reality Project India, TERI, WWF, and Mobius Foundation. So today we had 6 youth panelists across South Asia speaking on various diverse topics which they are working. So we can say that this session was majorly on the own experiences of the youth, which they are doing on field and with their own hands. So the success stories of this youth were from urban, rural, as well as the tribal areas from the South Asian region of the world. So the topics were from they covered from eco restoration of from in tribal and Maoist areas, as well as urban stream restoration, urban regeneration projects, restoration of grasslands, restoration of corridors, eco education, and empowering youth. So we can see that it was not just confined to a single ecosystem, but a diverse but a range of ecosystems were covered where this youth panels which we had were working for conservation. So the main aim, or we can say the objective of this session, was that the youth and youth leaders involved in environmental and sustainable development work, members of young youth networks, NGOs, and other network facilities come together and present their work. So the focus on the role of youth in taking leadership roles for ecosystem restoration and opportunities for the youth to engage actively and lead these processes. So in that, there were 2 main components. One is like the youth panel of we had 6 youth, as I said. They presented their work, as well as the experts from various organizations provide them also the participants with different platforms where youth can engage in restoration activities as well as climate change mitigation. So the major takeaways from the session, which we all would like to surely look, because this was, as in the beginning Dr. Rambu said, this was the session which got a good participation from the youth, and they were very interested to listen to the youth and what they are doing. So the first thing, the thing is sensitization of youth on climate change and biodiversity conservation is a crucial part, and the organizations which are working on it should take this seriously and engage more and more youths in it. So the youth have an urge to bring upon change, but they need to be guided to take apt actions which are in line. With that, involvement of local communities is very necessary for restoration of the local ecosystem in which they are working, as well as considering the indigenousness of that local ecosystem while restoring them. So the youth needs to be empowered for taking actions for ecosystem restoration and climate change mitigation. So with that, connect to livelihoods, experimental learning opportunities, research and action. With that, organizations can provide the youth who are very enthusiastic and who are willing to work the platforms to present their work or help them to get connected with some work. Also, they should be provided with opportunities for providing skills such as design thinking skills with digital technologies and other ways in which it is possible. With that, awareness and education are important for informed decision making, and the youth needs to be involved in decision making. This is a very important thing which came up from this session. Like the youth now needs to come forward and take be a part of the decision making. With that, advocacy is very important, and the youth should build up their voice, and they should start speaking on what are the issues, and they also they should take firm stance on what is happening. But one necessary care that needs to be taken, and which came out of the session, is like youth should not become activists without knowledge. They should have relevant and apt knowledge on what they are speaking, rather than becoming just activists and going ahead. They should have a very systematic knowledge on what they are speaking about ecosystem restoration or as well as climate change. With that, the youth, we all know, have the power to influence the world. So youth needs to understand their power and come ahead and lead the part for our future, present as well as the future generation. As we all know that this is the decade of ecosystem restoration. So this is a great opportunities for the youth to come ahead and lead all of us towards the ecosystem restoration as well as conservation efforts. With that knowledge, the outcome we can say of this was the knowledge about variety of ideas in which ways youth are engaging and can further engage in ecosystem restoration came upon. And today we were able to give opportunity to 6 such young people who are working very efficiently in the field in all across the state. So such more opportunities, if can be provided to youth panelists who are working all across the world, that will be really helpful for the coming future, we can say. With that, at the end, I would like to say, like, as I started with a quote from the youth panelist, I'll end with a quote from one of the expert panels from WWF, which is, do whatever you do with it a lot of wisdom. So that was said by Ms. Radhika Suri from WWF. So we, as it was a we can say it was a holistic, the session was holistic, as it comprised of the youth experience of the youth in the field they are working, as well as the experience of the experts. Like we were having experience, we can say, of a decade or century. Like, or if we comprise all of the experts which we had today, and if we combine their experience, then it would be surely more than a century. And that would be my end words. Thank you all.
Thank you, Arthur. Thank you very much. I think you took the maximum time, your group. How much time you exceeded?
I think not much.
1 hour, 40 minutes.
Okay.
Is it?
Yes, I think so.
No, it was, I think we just exceeded by 15 minutes.
Yes.
Or so.
No.
Well,
Can't believe. Anyway, Madhvi is also there. So any questions for this youth group? Very, I think this was the most active group, very dynamic and very lively discussions. I was, I think, very briefly inside the group.
I just wanted to add one more thing. I think it was something that struck me is the opportunity for networks, the importance of networks and young people. It comes from them, that the whole, impact that they can have as networks on and in the influence that they can have. So I think that is another takeaway from what we got today during this session. It was really, really very, very empowering and inspiring for us to listen to.
Yes, that's true. Experience versus the enthusiasm and merging together make us just give this idea for the concluding session.
Yeah.
A recommendation for a network, nicely worded, something for tomorrow.
We will do that. We will just put this together and send it across. Yeah.
Madhvi.
Ji, sir. Hello, sir.
I would like you to look at XR movement, which is going on in the UK.
I've made note of that when you were talking about it.
Yeah, it's very important,
absolutely,
because whatever we've done for the let's say last 10 years, people have been talking about carbon. Al Gore has been talking for 10 years about this, but no action is being taken. And we're getting worse and worse and not reaching our goals. So this is a very important thing, and how to go about it and what do you expect to achieve. It can only be done through political pressure, and that is what is required of the youth in the beginning. But I think one very important point said in your entire presentation by Atharva was that they must go with knowledge. Without knowledge of that, then there is no point going like a Jholawala and protesting. Knowledge is
true. Absolutely true.
This
I think
is
informed decision making and a knowledge is really.
Even if out of 100, 5 people have good knowledge, that should provide the leadership for the rest.
That's true.
So I think this is a very important thing for youth. Yeah.
Thank you so much.
I think it's very, very important for youth, because activism is okay, but that has to be. That is why this group was full with knowledgeable people, and of course activists. Finally, we have Ms. Anshul Kharbanda from NIUS. In fact, she just messaged that she wants to say some very important, I think, add to her group. So, Anshul, are you there?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, please.
Yes, sir, I'm here. So, thank you, sir, for giving me the opportunity, because we were the first ones to come out from there. So maybe we didn't get enough time there. So I thought I can share some of the things here too. So, sir, because you also wanted to know, like NIOS as a national level government organization, what are the initiatives that NIOS has been doing? So we recently launched a virtual open school, launched on 5th of August by the Education Minister. And the school, the virtual platform, it provides opportunities to the specially abled students also. They can also equally participate, and it involves different technologies like artificial intelligence, based on remotely proctored arrangements. And then there will be several new topics also, like cybersecurity and many other things, besides providing support through digital libraries, digital learning, digital classrooms, radio and television. So because you know that NIOS has a diverse clientele spread throughout the country, and with approx 500,000 students enrolling every year. So we have a diverse group of learners, and engaging all learners through the virtual platform is not possible because some may not have access to devices and internet. So we use multiple delivery approach using other platforms as well. We have the community radio programs, we have the live programs on television coming up, we have the Mukt Vidyavani, that is the web audio streaming, and many other initiatives other than what our course material is. So and then like this is like a new model, the virtual school that I talked about, because it will also provide learners the experience of virtual labs other than the virtual classrooms. Because during the pandemic also we have seen that learners, they have attended classes online, but they were not able to do the practicals and the examinations. So this virtual platform will also provide an opportunity for them to appear for exams online, and also to conduct practicals online using stimulation and other innovative techniques. So this was one thing I wanted to tell. Secondly, I also wanted to add that NIOS is today receiving the King Shijong UNESCO Literacy Prize for its digital initiatives in the field of sign language for the disabled. So that is also, thank you so much. And that is also a step towards sustainable education and inclusive education. And the most important thing, the last one and the most important, because in the group also we were discussing about collaboration. You also talked about collaboration. Then Neha talked about about teacher training, and Pramod ji also, he talked about bringing an attitudinal change. So as you already know, but I would also tell to the larger group also that NIOS has developed a gender green teacher program, which is a program for the teachers, and it would orient them to issues relating to gender and environment, so that when they are taking classes, imparting lectures, it is interwoven into their teachings and it goes to the students and creates a ripple effect. So the modules comprise of lessons in gender, environment, and sustainable education also. So it was a collaborative effort with UNESCO, having key persons from there, and then also the Center for Environment Education and also Commonwealth of Learning. So this was all what I wanted to add, besides what we have discussed in the group, that this is also that we have been doing. Thank you so much, sir, for the opportunity and for this wonderful conference. Thank you.
Thank you, Anshul. Thank you very much. In fact, I was part of your gender green.
Sure. Madhuri ma'am is also there. She's also there. And
yeah, Madhuri was also there. So, and congratulations from all of us for the UNESCO award. It's really very prestigious.
Yeah.
Yeah, NIOS is, I think, world's largest open schooling platform. But my question was, of course, it's we are getting late, but still I can just put this question. Because there is plethora of those private, the commercial entrants have come into. So where is, in that scenario, where does NIOS stands? Because they are much more popular, they have much more this learner base. So is there any study, or do you compare with them, or what is, of course you have advantages, much bigger advantages than that, being an open platform, open access platform.
Sir, besides being an open platform, NIOS is also a national level board in India. So if we talk of NIOS, we that's one of the two national level boards. We have CBSE, we often talk about ICSE also, but NIOS is a national board. So it has its importance as a national board, which is recognized in all parts of country also, and in abroad also. So that, I think, is a plus point that we have over other private institutions, private players that are there. And the degree, the certificates that we give is of course of national importance. They are recognized everywhere. So that makes a difference in like why students should be opting for NIOS. So this is why we have a large database of students also.
I think well said. Finally, there is a question from Neeraj Sapkota. It's on, I think you can answer. How do we address privacy concerns?
Regarding privacy concerns, in this virtual platform, the virtual open school that has been launched, so there will be certain features will be embedded, like the recognition, the artificial intelligence, and other features that would identify. So a teacher who is there addressing to the students, and there would be a large group when we talk of open schooling, a large group of learner is there on the platform. So the teacher has the authority or the hold there to block the learner if he or she is not behaving appropriately. But then before that, she can always give them chances to improve upon before she actually goes for that. But yes, there are many privacy concerns that have been taken into account, like this one I mentioned, and she can also privately reach out to those learners and give them, once or twice they can warn them for those things.
Thank you so much.
Dr.
Yeah.
I have.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah, please.
You're talking about session 2, is it?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. So there is. I would like you to look at website of Sustainability Mafia. Can you note that
Sure.
down and have a look at that website?
Sure, sir.
They are doing a virtual school also for sustainability on that from the United States. So have a look at Sustainability Mafia. Okay.
Okay, sir.
And if you can't get through, then contact me again, and I'll give you the link.
Sure, sir. Sure, sir, I think I found it. So I Googled it and found it. It's there. I'll explore.
That was fast.
Yes, sir.
Very fast. Yeah, I think, are there any other questions or comments? So I think everybody is quite, of course, even charged up. I won't say tired, because there might be a lot of queries are coming up online. But for now, we are ending this session. Very interesting. All those 5 groups. In fact, I think very interesting. Some new insights have come, and hopefully our team is preparing a recap. Tomorrow morning, we will just present it. The young reporters for environment. Thank you, Madhavi and the FEE team, for training them, choosing them, and assigning them. They are doing, I think, great job here. So we will have.
Thank you.
Yes. Yes, Madhavi has been, means the youth session. She is, from this very beginning, she has been along with Athav and all the group. So Preeti's group was also very, very active. Sanskriti brought a new, of course, means she was very late to come. Actually, at one time we thought that this session is not going to happen. But yes, because all session briefs have come and they were uploaded on the website. Only this group was, but finally they come. I think it was one of the best sessions, because I attended. Out of 5 sessions, I thought I will let me divide in around 10 minutes each, but I was there for the maximum time. So I extend on behalf of all the organizers, means Mobius Foundation partners. Thank you everyone, group leaders, panelists, participants. But conference is not yet over. We have tomorrow, but today itself, a lot of opportunities for you to interact. There is networking lounge, various chat rooms. If you want to chat with someone in detail, that is available. Exhibitions, posters, papers, contributed papers, and resource center. So you take advantage of all that. And for now, I think let us close this session with a huge applause to each and everyone. Thank you so much.